Man, I swear to goodness gracious, hockey writers these days are just throwing out everything, seeing what sticks, and trying to get the conversation started in more ways than one. Let's talk once again, for the umpteenth time, however many times we've talked about this, about Patrick Kane, Chicago Blackhawks forward, an inevitable trade chip, and the New York Rangers. Because when it comes to the Rangers and their apparent interest to get themselves a player in the trade market, a guy like Patrick Kane comes to mind as one of the potentially prime targets. And the reason for that is mostly due to nostalgia. Okay, not mostly due to nostalgia, it's due to a lot of things. Firstly, Patrick Kane is a legitimately good player. Secondly, he is expiring soon. His 10.5 AAV is going to be off the record at the end of the 2022-2023 season. So, if the Blackhawks wanted to retain salary on Kane, send him over to another team, that other team could benefit very much from him and his services. And then you also have yourselves the other element, I guess, wherein the Chicago Blackhawks are just trying to go out there and rebuild. They're trying to go out there and load off a whole bunch of guys. Taves, Kane, Andreas Athanasiou, Max Domi, get a whole bunch of draft picks, get a whole bunch of prospects as well. And the New York Rangers have quite a few of those that I feel most NHL teams would be intrigued in. Plus the fact that Patty Kane was a former line mate of Artemi Panarin, who is one of the highest paid wingers in the entire National Hockey League. They had some really good chemistry together in Chicago, and yeah, I think there's a lot of people that kind of recognize the value of having these conversations, because if it happens, it would be really cool. Having Patrick Kane in the Big Apple and Madison Square Garden, hopefully helping out a team that made the third round last year into making it even further. And now you have yourselves even more articles going about discussing what a trade could look like. This is our newest piece on NBC Sports Chicago, so this is not Larry Brooks in the New York Post, it's not Sarah Bailey on Daily Faceoff, this is nationwide insurance agent Jeff Vukovich. Wait a minute, no, it's just presented by him. The article is written by Charlie Roumeliotis, and I will leave a link in the description if you want to go ahead and read this. It was from, 6 days ago? Yeah, December 18th, so almost about a week ago. What would a Hawks-Rangers trade look like involving Patrick Kane? Now, opening up the piece, Roumeliotis actually talks about how he's spoken to some members of the organization who believe that Patrick Kane will stay with the Blackhawks. He has talked to others who can't imagine that he would as well. The fact is, there isn't a clear answer, and that's kind of indicative that no decision has been made, at least not outwardly. The article goes over the intro, it talks about the past, it talks about Panarin and how the Rangers could be a target, and then it brings up the Claude Giroux trade from a year ago, or not a year ago, from last season, wherein the Panthers received Giroux, Connor Bunnaman, a former first-round pick in German Rutzoff, and a fifth, in exchange for Tippett, a conditional first, and a third. We had made the entire video talking about how the Flyers got fleeced in that situation. Go ahead and watch that, it's at 30,000 views, or whatever it is. And then Roumeliotis goes out there and talks about how Kane's situation could be slightly different. Firstly, Giroux reportedly gave Philadelphia only one team that he wanted to get traded to, which limited the return. If Kane were to give Chicago multiple teams, it would open up a potential bidding war. If he were to choose just one, the return could be similar to Giroux's, although I would argue Kane is playing at a higher level and warrants a larger return because of it. Furthermore, Kane's cap hit is 10.5, and you'll probably have to retain a little bit more, potentially with a third team involved if you really wanted to make things worth it for the team that would ultimately receive Patrick Kane. The main reason why the Blackhawks and Rangers would be ideal trade partners in a Kane trade is that it checks off a lot of boxes for both the player and the Blackhawks. Now, we've discussed a lot of these points, how the Rangers have the young assets, how they have the cap space, how they have the opportunity, and how they would actually have a good core, too. We've talked about this a ton, so we'll skip over this right now, but what I wanted to talk about was the potential return as highlighted by this article on NBC Sports. If you're the Blackhawks, how high is your asking price? A first-round pick would almost certainly be part of the package, and after that, it gets interesting. Would the Rangers part ways with K'Andre Miller or Braden Schneider? Doubtful. What about Philip Cheadle, Kaapo Kakko, or Alexis Lafreniere? That's where the conversation would probably go next, and that's probably where it should go next. Multiple league scouts I had spoken to were not very high on Vitaly Kravtsov, so I don't think he would be a prospect the Blackhawks would get overly excited about. The article ends off by talking about how the Rangers might not have been in the Kane sweepstakes earlier and how some people were kind of saying that it was a long shot, but now they could be primary players in this sweepstakes. But either way, I wanted to talk about this in particular because with this idea being laid out there, Kane in exchange for some of Chytil, Kakko, or Lafreniere, that's an entire line that is being proposed here as a potential return, or not the return itself, but just a conversation as to what the return could include. I'd talked about other prospects, we had made videos about Braden Schneider and Vitaly Kravtsov and Nils Lundqvist earlier before that guy got traded over to Dallas, and I could understand any of the arguments for all these other guys. But the thing is, whenever you talk to Rangers fans, and I've noticed this in my YouTube comment section as well, whenever you talk about potential trades, you talk about guys like Horvat or Patrick Kane or JT Miller, etc., etc., doesn't really seem like a lot of Rangers fans would be willing to give up on Alexis Lafreniere and or Kaapo Kakko just yet. Just the mere idea of suggesting both of them in a trade, that right there, I'm sorry, I get that the writer over here, Charlie Romeliadis, is doing his job, but I don't know, man, that's a pretty big ask. And it's not a big ask because of what these players are today. Oh no, absolutely not. Lafreniere and Kaapo Kakko have not broken out in the ways that we know they're capable of yet. But if they do something like that, let's say by the time 2025 rolls around, they could be premier top 6 forwards in the National Hockey League, boasting up, let's say 60 to 70 points each as they get more comfortable in the league. These guys need time, and they're definitely on the younger side, so trading them away in some sort of a Kane situation where you're only really trying to help out the now, I don't know, man, it doesn't really feel like something I think the Rangers would be interested in doing. And also, it's something that I think a lot of Rangers fans would get pissed off at you for bringing up. Now, I get it. You could say, oh, who cares what the fans think? It's all about what the GM thinks. But then again, they've stressed so much in the Rangers organization about how they believe in the young guys and they want to transition into the youth guys that are there because Lafreniere and Kakko and Chytil, they're growing and maturing, etc., etc. Heck, even last year's playoff run saw a really good stretch of play from all 3 of these guys on the kid line. And so even if you're talking, okay, future versus now, there still is some now that you can get out of these players. Sure, they're not as consistent as you probably would like them to be. None of these guys are Patrick Kane after all. But if Lafreniere becomes the breakout player he's supposed to be, let's say just 2 or 3 years later, and you still have all the other younger guys coming in here too. Brennan Othmann is supposed to be very good. He's been doing very well at the World Juniors so far. Kaapo Kakko finally grows into that two-way power winger that he was supposed to be. We know Jack Hughes, the guy taken above Kakko, just recently broke out last year, so if Kakko takes just a little bit extra time to do that, that wouldn't be the most surprising thing to happen in my opinion. The Rangers have some other prospects and some other picks that I do think the Blackhawks would also be interested in as well. It's not just Lafreniere and Kakko. As we had talked about, Brennan Othmann is here, Ryder Korzak is here. I also do like Will Coyle. Dylan Garand is the goaltending prospect that everybody was talking about a while ago as well. There are some pretty noteworthy names, and if you compile these with draft picks, I don't think the Chicago Blackhawks would have to look far to find an asset or two that they're interested in. Now, okay, maybe getting one of Lafreniere or Kakko or whatever would be okay, but not both, let alone Kaapo Kakko, Lafreniere, and Chytil. That's a lot. A very, very, very lot, and I don't think Rangers fans would be happy to see the entire kid line get shipped away for a few months of Patrick Kane, as nice as it would be having him play with Panarin once again. But either way, talk in the comments your thoughts about this idea. The article is linked in the description if you want to go ahead and read this. Patrick Kane for one of Lafreniere or Kakko or both, or maybe all 3 of the kid line with Chytil involved as well. Maybe Chytil and Kakko, Chytil and Lafreniere, or Lafreniere by himself and some other stuff. If you're a Blackhawks fan, how does that make you feel? If you're a Rangers fan, how ticked off does it make you feel? Would you actually be okay with doing this? And if you are, please let me know in the comments why that is, because I've been seeing way too many Rangers fans on my own personal social medias going out there and saying, no, we're not doing that. That's too much there. Thoughts in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed this video. Juraj 9, and bye.